NFL. And then you had LeBron and Durant that have been very open about their political views, and they made a statement after the tragic events that happened in Florida. And then you had the whole thing where a Fox News analyst said to LeBron, just shut up and dribble. There's no room for comments like that. Athletes have the stage that if they want to release their political views, they should be allowed to do that without consequences. Do I agree with everything they say? No. Where Steve Kerr got up there and said, we have a racist president and we live in a racist country. I don't personally believe that. I don't. I don't think that we live in a racist country, and I don't think that we have a racist president. We too much as a society look at race and make that the overwhelming issue. Now, with that said, are there racists in this country? Absolutely there is. But to sit there and say that we live in a racist country and that our president is racist, come on. Come on. That's a bit much there. That's a bit much. And I have, I've had some sports where I'm not going to, release their names because of their protection and not wanting to be addressed in it, but that have said that they believe that Steve Kerr is playing to the players. That this isn't something that he firmly believes, that he's playing to his players when he says stuff like this. But that's where people say, hey, these guys, some say they should just stay quiet about it, and others say, hey, they have that platform, they have that power, they should be able to say what they want. But the Fox News analyst that says to LeBron, shut up and dribble, that's a bit much. Now, do I think that she was being racist with those terms? No, I don't. I don't think that she was saying that with racist intent. She just used bad words to pretty much say to LeBron and Durant, hey, stay in your zone, play sports, don't get involved in the politics. But politics have drawn into sports. And part of it is because of players and coaches speaking out on certain topics. And then another part of it is when you have situations like with Jemele Hill at ESPN and President Trump, who Jemele Hill, as you know, got on Twitter, pretty much called Trump a racist, a bigot, and all this stuff, and ESPN suspended her for a couple of weeks. And she's now no longer on the 6 o'clock Sports Center. And that was her decision. That was not ESPN removing her. But you have ESPN, who is, the biggest network in sports, the leading sports network, that pulls in millions and millions of dollars every year, telling their on-air talent, hey, don't stay away from this. Don't talk about this on the air. But when it goes into sports, it's kind of hard not to discuss it or bring it up. And am I saying that you need to, agree with all their views? No. Like I just said, I don't agree with Steve Kerr's comments. I don't believe that our president is a racist, and I don't believe that we live in a racist country. Do I think that there's racists in this country? Absolutely. But do I think that there's an overall line drawn between races? No, I don't. But it's sad that it's still an issue. It's sad when you've had people like Harriet Tubman, Martin Luther King, that fought to create a place in a society where race was no longer an issue, yet we still have it. And do I think some of it's blown out of proportion? Yes. Because I've talked about before how if we as a society keep pointing to and looking at race, all it's going to do is make more issues in tension. But this is an interesting line that, has continued to be where you have athletes and coaches protesting and speaking out on things, and then you have a major sports network and ESPN that is telling their on-air talent, don't get involved in the politics in sports. It's a slippery slope. Don't get involved in it. And I can understand where they're coming from. They're not just trying to protect themselves and their business and industry, but they're trying to protect their on-air talent. Because anything you say, especially when you draw a line between politics and sports, it can be twisted and blown out of proportion. And the last thing they want is somebody to get on there on the air and say something that's kind of questionable, but they may be looking at it from a different viewpoint, and it ends up getting twisted and blown out of proportion. But on the other side of it, I feel that, talk about it. Make it an issue. Make it a topic. Bring it up. And you had, a president at ESPN who has recently stepped down, and I don't know what's going to happen there now with, they now have new leadership in place. But that, the last president that they had at ESPN was a phenomenal individual. And he was a huge part of why there were so many women on air at ESPN and why there were so many African American on air at ESPN. He wanted a diverse culture. He created that. He strived for that. And now they're in a place where now they have new leadership, and where do you go from here? But I can understand the line of, hey, we know athletes and coaches are talking about politics and putting their views out there, but we don't want you as an on-air talent or broadcaster here at ESPN, we don't want you putting your opinions on this out there. And some people believe that with how some of these athletes and coaches are handling politics and sports, and by putting their opinions and statements out there, that all they're doing is drawing more of a line. They're just creating more tension and more distrust. So where should politics and sports be? Should it be a clear line where, hey, don't use that platform to give your political view. Go somewhere else with it, but don't bring it into sports. But for ESPN, who is trying to obviously draw this line and is trying to say, hey, don't get involved in this stuff. Well, it's kind of hard to do that when you have LeBron, Durant, and Steve Kerr who are being very open and very public with their views on these things. I say let them do it, but I can also understand the line that ESPN is at, because they don't want themselves to get caught up in it, and at the same time, they don't want their on-air talent to get up there, give a view, give an opinion, and it get twisted and turned around. Kevin Love says he's confident that he will fit in when he comes back to the new look Cavs. We know the whole story of how some Cavs players that were there before this massive offload, before they did the trade, that believed that Kevin Love wasn't giving it his all, that he didn't care. Some saying that he didn't fit in. And once again, the talk of race was brought up. Some people were saying that Kevin Love was too white for the Cavaliers. And then there are people that were saying that the Cavs were too black for Kevin Love. And that's why there was an issue and a problem being brought up. He seemed to fit in there pretty good when they won the championship that year with Kyrie Irving there. There didn't seem to be issues there. Now all of a sudden there seems that there have been underlying issues. Now, can we realistically say that Kevin Love has not been the Kevin Love that he was in Minnesota? Yes. But part of that is the team and the atmosphere. At the time, Kevin Love was Minnesota's best player. So he's going to get the ball a lot, and with that, he's going to have big numbers. When he went to Cleveland, we all knew his role was going to downgrade. He was not going to be the guy. And is that something that may bother him? Does he want to be a bigger role? I go back to, I can't remember the game, I think it was against the Celtics when Kevin Love got knocked down. Sorry, I take that back. It was against the Spurs when a lot of this started, when he was supposedly battling an illness and didn't play the rest of the game. This was before the massive trade happened. There were Cavs players that believed that he pretty much gave up in that game. Well, there's an incident in that game where he gets knocked down, and you see J.R. Smith and another Cavs player pretty much look at him on the ground and don't help him up. It's actually a Spurs player that ends up helping him up. And a lot of people have looked at that and said, that's clear knowledge there that there's an issue. A lot of times when you see a player get knocked down, his teammates knock him up, pick him up. Well, in this instance, J.R. Smith, I can't remember who the other Cavs player was, pretty much look right at Kevin Love, see him reaching out to try to get lifted back up, and they just turn and walk away. And it's actually a Spurs player that ends up helping him up. That, to me, shows that there is some disagreement and issues there. Because the majority of the time, your teammates help you up. There, it was actually a Spurs player that helped them up. And I said it, when they did their whole massive trade and got rid of Shumpert, Crowder, Wade, Thomas, Fry, and Rose, that they should have tried to, if it's that much of an issue, if there's a cultural issue or whatever it may be, Kevin Love just isn't fitting in, whatever it may be, trade him. Get something for him. Try to help your team out more. And granted, the Cavs right now look and are playing a lot better than what they were before. And now we're hearing that, the original report was that it was Isaiah Thomas that pointed Kevin Love out in a team meeting and pretty much, fired off at him. Well, now we're hearing that it was not Isaiah Thomas